I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet talking about personal AI assistants, and one of the key concepts that makes a lot of this magical is the idea of creating a self-sustaining context engine. So what that means is that as opposed to having to maintain your context yourself, the system itself builds it for you, right? So the way that you would think about it is every time a session happens, the agent itself will wrap up what happened in the session and then upload it into your context for you, right? So it's self-sustaining documentation to keep your context fresh all the time. Now, a lot of what I've seen is I've got this self-sustaining context engine, but no one really talks about how to go about building it. What I'm thinking right now is to share with you guys how I'm going to be building a self-sustaining context engine for my personal AI assistant. And we'll go through all the nitty-gritty detail as opposed to showing you a finished product or just saying that it exists, right? Hopefully this will be educational for you guys. So I did a bit of pre-work before this, not all the way, but I think very importantly when we're building something, it's to have an idea around what is it that you're building and the architecture and the flow around what you're building. In essence, I'm splitting this build into three parts. There is going to be one component around wrapping up your sessions. A lot of us are doing meetings on the daily, and that's a very big part of our lives, and a lot of context actually lives in those meetings, especially if you're working a 9 to 5. So there will be a meeting reviewer agent that will review the meetings, and that gets consolidated into a context curator that then writes into your key context documents. So I split this workflow into two parts. Every session should be wrapped up by an agent. So that's part one. And then part two will be something that wraps up all of my meetings. And this will happen at 2 a.m. every single day while I sleep. And then what this curator agent will do is it will absorb the daily logs. That is a consolidation of all my session wraps. And then it also ingests my daily note, which is basically my journal. So it's my reflection of the day on what has happened, how I felt about it. This also contains data about health tracking. I wear a Whoop, so it has things like my recovery score, it has things like my strain score. So that gives good context around energy levels, how I went about my day, etc. So that's wealth of information that then gets consolidated into what it's going to be a daily summary. And the idea is for this to be re-injected into every session for the next 2 days. And the reason why this is important for me is because what I want is for my personal AI assistant to have a persistent memory, meaning to say it knows what I worked on the day before. So yeah, this is what we're looking to build. I have done some pre-work around scoping what this looks like, what this entire system looks like, and I'll show you the PRD. But this one has not been built, or rather like I have not scoped this one out. A few things as well is that I currently have a session wrap agent, but it only logs things quite sparsely and it needs a bit of an upgrade. So I'm looking to rebuild this entire thing completely. Okay, so this is the overall PRD for the entire system, which we will update later because this entire thing doesn't have any mention around the meetings reviewer agent. What I will do is once I build out the intended workflow for the meetings review agent, we will update this document. Alfred, my personal AI assistant, will do it for me. We have to go through it in detail and then amend it. Then specifically what we're looking to build immediately right now is the session wrap agent, and this is the PRD. A few things to highlight here is that the intended workflow for me is to use a session end hook. So what that means is that when I exit a chat, clear a chat, or I just use Control D, or I tell the agent to wrap it up, what it will do is it will trigger the agent to run. I'm going to be building the agent as a skill, and the reason is because at the end of the day, it allows for me to review in detail how the skill works Anthropic has a new skill creator that allows for you to be doing evaluations once the skill is completed, and I intend to use that to make sure that the skill is producing up to spec, and that's what the eval loops are for. So at the end of the session, I'll show you a couple of how this happens with Anthropic's new skill creator. A few other design choices that I've decided upon is also to show what is extracting, right? And this is actually in the family of different extractions. First one is to extract things for the purpose of continuity, which means to say that if a session has not completed a specific task, the next session will be able to pick up where I left off. What this means is that there's a field that talks about in progress, what has shipped, what is still looking to be shipped. Open threads, those will be things that are unresolved questions that requires my attention to be thought through in the next session. Actions, so these will be things that are committed during the session itself. For example, oh, I think I should do this next. And then record would be to record what has been shipped, what was the considerations, the decisions that were made that resulted in what was shipped, the rationale behind it, and then the learnings. Now, the reason why a lot of these are important as well is because, bear in mind, remember that the daily log will then be read by the curator agent at the end of the day to then be recording things into project memory. And project memory is where learnings live, right? So that the next time I'm working on a project, it is uploading that learnings from before so that we're not having to run through similar challenges, or if there's an optimal way of doing specific things, then the agent knows what routes to take, right? So that's why we've got things like learnings as well that needs to be captured as a part of the daily log, because it will then be passed by the context curator agent to then be parked inside the project memory. The way that I've thought about the architecture is not to have one large monolithic learning document, because that's not efficient when it comes to tokens. Because what will happen is a learnings.md should be loaded at every session, right? But because this is a multi-purpose agent that I have, it works across different projects. So what that means is that each project needs to have its own learnings. Learnings that are related to personal brand have got no value to learnings around building AI infrastructure, right? So for me, breaking out those learnings by projects is part of what we're looking to do, which is why we have projects memory 1, memory 2, and that's split by projects. And then finally, what's also important for me is for it to keep a repository of, or updating the repository of people that I engage with. So that will be meetings with so-and-so. Is there anything outstanding or open threads with that person, etc. And then finally, my agent needs to continuously get to know me really well. What are the behavioral patterns that it can observe when it's engaging with me? So then what happens is this patterns.md gets refreshed on a daily basis. So as I continuously work with the agent, it's understanding me better, session on session, day by day. Yeah. So that's the other thing that we are looking to extract out of all those sessions, and even like the meetings. So intentionally, what we're looking to do here is to break down the extraction inside of the session wrap into two parts, or rather having two agents run concurrently, which is one is to extract the work that has been done, the work that needs to happen after, and then the other is to extract patterns. What you want with your agents is for them to specialize, so to speak. So you got one sub-agent that extracts work-related things, and then you have another sub-agent that looks through the same transcripts and looks for patterns about me. So they've got very specialized objectives and intentions, and then it just, all of it flows back into the main session wrap orchestrator agent to then go and process into a session entry. So this is the workflow here. Every session that you have inside of Claude Code will have a transcript that is saved inside of your computer. Claude Code will be able to find it for you. Don't worry, just ask it. It will then load project plans for the domains that were touched. So what this means is that it will understand in that session what was worked on, what project is related to the session. If there's no project that's related to the session, then obviously it will not document anything about projects. and it becomes a standard session that just gets logged. A big part of building a lot of these skills, which I think people don't communicate enough, is that you need to spend time, energy, and effort around how these skills are architected, and you need to go through in detail every component of it so that you get the output that you want. And I think a lot of people skim through skill design, which is not what we intend to do here. We want to go through each piece of it in great detail. And that's why I'm building out this pretty substantive document to feed into the skill creator so that it knows exactly what I'm looking for. And then after that, we run it through Evals. I think I have covered the bulk of it. The other thing that we also want to make sure to provide to it so that it has more information about what we're building is actually a schema or a spec sheet. When it comes to what it is going to output at the end of the day, it should output something that looks like this. So this is what good output looks like. And this needs to be scoped out to the agent. And again, you will see that some of this is repeat, and that's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, it will just ingest a lot of this when it's scanning or it's exploring documents to understand what you're looking for. But again, this is pretty detailed in terms of what to extract, what not to extract, how do you identify what projects are being worked on, and then loading the right projects, right? Okay, and then after you've got a complete example of what it looks like here. I think this is the main important piece of the puzzle to show it specifically what it should be writing. Yep, let's go ahead and build, okay? Right, spin out Claude code here. What I'm gonna say is I want to create a new skill, spin out the skill creator, please. So you can see it's loaded the skill, right? What do you want to build? Give me the rundown. What should it do? When should it trigger? What's the expected outcome? But because I've done a lot of the scoping already, what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to give it full context around what I'm planning right now, right? So yeah, create a session wrap skill. I have the entire skill scoped out here, and add PRD session wrap. The other thing that's important to also give it is I also have the output schema called session entry here. No need to say called, but just here. Okay. Schema. And then lastly, the other thing that is important for it to know is this session wrap skill is part of the wider build that is scoped out here. And then we do jetty overnight pipeline. We are only building the session wrap agent, so session wrap skill. Now I currently have a session wrap agent, which is the v0 of my loops. It's working okay, but we're looking at a major upgrade. So the reason why I'm giving it this context around the fact that I have a session wrap agent that is working fine is that maybe it can look at certain patterns that is currently working to then inherit some of them. So yeah, let's send it. And then what it will do is read these documents, understand the context of each of these documents. So what happens is when I close a window here on the terminal, it will automatically in the back end run a Claude session that prints the session wrap, or rather that runs the session wrap agent in the background. So it becomes this invisible architecture from which I don't actually have to bother about it. What it will do is it will wrap up the session, it will document all the important things about the session in the background, and then it will then get pushed to Git. So things are constantly updated. So let's let it run in terms of what it's doing here, what it's reading, etc., which is the logs. Yeah, so now you see, because I gave it the context around V0, it's reading the V0 output quality. It will then try to tally it up to what V0 is and what V1 needs to be, and then it will produce something for me. So it's really good at just exploring the relevant documents, reading them, and then coming up with the build. Let's see what it comes up with next. While that is running, one of the things that we can do is also to talk about this, right? And like I said, I haven't actually built out a PRD document for this. So maybe we can take it in a bit of a different way now that I'm thinking about it. And really, what we're trying to do here is to integrate our current meetings transcription ecosystem with the personal AI assistant, right? How this works is I have meetings that happen on Gmeets. What will happen is at an organizational level, what we use is Gemini note taker that then does two things. It will send me an email on the notes from the meet, and then it is also uploaded into my G drive. Okay, what happens is we do the meeting's transcribed by Gemini. It will tell me that the meeting notes are ready and it's in my drive, and then it will then upload the notes, meeting notes, uploaded into my drive. So the goal for me when I build something like this is I need for you to scan my inbox for meeting notes for, and it should have a today marker, right? And then what it should do is then find my meeting notes in my G drive, and then what it should do, read the meeting notes in my G drive. Now the meeting notes will have key discussion points, action items, etc. So what will happen is you'll just read that, and it would have, I would say, 80-90% of the context from that meeting itself. Now, one of the things that is important to note when it comes to a lot of these meeting note takers is that they can tend to get identities wrong. So what that means is that not only should it read, it should also clean up the meeting notes, like typos, name, wrong names, etc. Okay, what it should do is it should identify the topic of the meeting, who's involved. So it needs to have some context about what's happening. So for example, if this is a work meeting, and most of it will be work meeting, I work for a company called Caliber, right? So it should understand that this is a Caliber meeting. So what will happen is it will do these things, and then after that, it should write meeting summary. Let's create meeting summary. And then it should then update context documents. It should identify specific people files. So the different people that I had the meeting with, right now my context engine has got a log of each of these people and what's outstanding, what we're working on, etc. So this is the workflow. Scan my inbox for notes today. So I'm gonna split this up and specifically state that this happens at 2 a.m. when we do the context update or this can happen earlier as well. Again, we can figure out when the cron job will be for this. So this will be unique to your current use case. So if you're using Granola, it has a different workflow, but what we're using is Google Workspace. And this entire stack here, okay, this entire stack here is enabled by GWS, which is the Google Workspace CLI that just launched not long ago, that allows for you to link up Gmail, G Drive. Those are the two important ones, but it can also connect your sheets to your slides, your Word doc. So very good, very powerful. You need to install this onto your machine, and there is some setup that you need to go through on the Google Cloud platform. But yeah, so these three things are enabled by GWS, have that installed already. Okay, let's go back to build. What are we doing here? Okay, so here's what it has. Is the name of the skill is session wrap. The description is not super important to me at the moment. And the reason why that's the case is because I'm running this automated, which means to say I won't be triggering the skill to activate, right? Okay, so what is it? Deep extraction engine for Alfred sessions. Alfred is my personal AI assistant. It reads the JSON-L transcript, extracts structured content across 4 information families, and writes a domain tag entry for the day's session log. Why deep extraction at session end? Session wrap is an unfair advantage. It runs immediately after a session with full temporal context. This is the optimal moment for extraction, not at 2 a.m. processing multiple transcripts in batch. So like it's getting this context because it's part of my PRD, right? When we optimize skills for token efficiency, things like this might not be relevant at the moment, but we're not optimizing for token efficiency right now. We are optimizing for quality. So what that means is if this helps it, leave it there for a bit. We can optimize for efficiency once we know that the quality that comes from this is good. So quality bar, overnight pipeline should never need to touch raw JSON-L. If it does session wrap, then go deep enough. Okay. Session wrap is an orchestrator. It handles work extraction directly, families 1 to 3, and delegates pattern observation to a sub-agent. This split exists because work logging and pattern observation are different cognitive modes. Narrative extraction, what happened, versus behavioral analysis. Yep. Combined in a single pass, patterns get shortcutted because narrative is more concrete and dominates attention. And overwhelmingly, what we find is that if you divide the agent's attention to doing too many things, one thing gets sacrificed. And what I've observed is that it doesn't observe patterns when it's trying to, create a narrative, right? These are two different thinking modes. Funny thing is that you should think about how your agents work similar like people, Okay, so orchestrator, this skill, discover JSON-L, read transcript, scan for domain markers, load project plans for touch domains. This is an important distinction here, an important step, because in order for it to write good updates for you, it needs to understand what is it that you are working on. So this is an important step, because if you just have like an agent that doesn't have any context write stuff for you, it doesn't have background around what to document, what's important, and what's next. So this is actually an important part of the design. Spawn pattern observer sub-agent, extract families 1 to 3, works in parallel, collect pattern observer results, assemble write set session entry, push git, okay, and then write wrap marker. Okay, process, discover JSON-L transcripts. It's getting my date. That's important. You'll find that working with agents, sometimes it gets the date wrong because of how it's trained. ls is looking for the specific session, and then filter files to modify today. Each JSON-L is 1 session, read transcript, determine time, focus on role user, role assistant, which is Alfred, etc. Session end, session time, path, large transcript, read in chunks, extract from each independently, merge and duplicate. Okay, scan for domains. Is it Alfred? Is it Caliber? Skill invocation, discussing Caliber clients, team operations. Okay, Load project plans for each domain touched except other. Read its plan file. This context enables in-progress entries that reference the roadmap, epic numbers, task IDs, what's next in the dependency chain instead of vague descriptions. So that's what I was talking about. To make sure that it reads the plans so that the plans are contextualized, or rather the writing is contextualized. Then it's also going to spawn pattern observer. So this is what's happening in parallel. Work extraction, families 1 to 3. Highest family, okay. Family 2, family 3. So again, these are all according to the specs that were identified earlier, right? So that's good. And then assemble session entry. There we go. Write the daily session log. Okay. And then where is it going? Daily session log. Create the files if it doesn't exist. So one of the things here is that the location is wrong because again, it's context daily session log, right? Yeah. Create the file if it doesn't exist. If it exists, okay, append. Git push. Okay, that's good. Crush machine happens all the time. Prevent double wrapping by the session end hook. Error handling. So this looks pretty good as a first pass, and the reason why the quality is like this is because we have very specific specs. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and create the skill. You want me to create pattern observer.md. Yes. Session entry schema.md. Yep. Okay. So those will be all the reference files that needs to go into it, and then it'll go ahead and write it. Okay. So basically we have this entire thing here built. Oh, it's already noted me. Okay. Draft is written, 3 files. All this has been written. Pattern observer lives in reference. Orchestrator reads at runtime. Passes it when spawning sub-agent. Schema is full contract. Copy it from your PRD output. Next step, test cases. PRD calls for 2 to 3 real JSON L scripts, short, medium, long. Scan your recent sessions and pick suitable candidates. Also, do you want me to do a full eval loop? Because this session is running a bit long, maybe eval loop we won't go through right now. I think let's vibe check the outputs first. Let's run the test cases. Search the past 5 days for the right candidates, and then I'll review the session log. Okay, so while this is running, we'll talk a bit more about this, which is we've got this is the current setup. We've got enabled by GWS CLI, and then everything here is what the agent needs to do, right? Actually, all this is what the agent needs to do. I'm gonna put this here. What the agent needs to do. Meetings reviewer. Agent needs to do. Okay, so what's great is that I can screenshot this entire thing. Again, like if I was working on this myself, I would go through in a bit more detail. But, I think this is good enough context to give it. So once you screenshot, what you're able to do then is get it to write the specs for you. So I'm going to say I'm working on project Alfred now, specifically E21. E21 is Epic 21, which is the project for this entire engine. I have a architecture for a meeting reviewer that fits into the overall inbound context engineering system, and I like to build PRD for it based on this workflow that I have linked as an image. So then what we do is we jump into recent screenshots, copy, and then just link it here. All right, let it go. And let's take a look at what's happening here. It's running basically the session. So it's found a couple of different sessions. It's running the 4 agents to then do the eval with and without. Let's take a look. I think what's happening as well is it is creating a session wrap workspace. So this is being built as sort of like a space for you to continuously iterate and improve on the skill, which is what the new skill does, which is kind of cool in my opinion. So it's just running the agents. It's even doing the assertions, right? I said let's not do it, but it's gone ahead to do it anyway. So let's just run it. It's valuable. Okay, back to the other piece of the puzzle, which is loading the project. So just now I was showing project markers, right? So when I wrap up this session in the future, it knows that this session is working on this project specifically. It's loading and reading the E21 Epic plan and the existing PRD outputs, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so it's a full context. I can see the architecture clearly from the image, current state, Gmeets, Gemini note taker, email notification, drive upload, manual review. So again, what I do have currently is a manual review systems, which is meetings-review. Target state right now is for it to run 2 a.m. overnight sweep. An autonomous agent scans inbox for today's meeting notes, finds them in Drive, read them. 2 parallel jobs, which is identify topic people, clean up typo names. Maybe not 2 parallel jobs, right? It's gonna draft the PRD for me in the same format as a session wrap and overnight pipeline PRDs, and we'll correct it accordingly, right? I'm looking at it to be able to read the meeting notes, understand what the topic is about, and then rewrite it after understanding where the typos are, specifically when it comes to names. Because when you've got transcribers, it tends to get names wrong, or rather like, there's a habit of getting names, whether it is client names or it is individual names, it gets it wrong, or they get like wrong spelling, which is something that we need to address to clean up and make sure that it's documenting the right things. Okay, so agent evals completed, the medium skill is done. This one looks strong. 7 ship items with file paths, 7 decisions with rationales, patterns, pattern observation with evidence, 3 remaining. So it's still going. I really like this new approach to how it's doing this, because again, you land at a much better skill at the end, right? Because the eval is part of the building of the skill. It's also pretty light in terms of your effort, right? It takes longer to build, but you get a better skill at the end of the day, which means to say you need to go through less loops to improve it down the line. So it's still running. It says, okay, all 6 runs are complete. Let me grade them and build the viewer. So what it will then do is it will build you a HTML viewer. It will load into your screen to give you the report. Meanwhile, let's take a look at what's happening here. PRD created at outputs PRD meetings reviewer, and we can basically go through it here, which is outputs here. Okay. Why what it replaces, which is a manual command, interactive playback and confirmation. A few things that I will note here, which is this should be built as a skill but executed by the task subagent. In the workflow, I'm envisioning it, the skill to be, or rather envisioning the skill to be executed by the overnight pipeline orchestrator. So that's one of the key distinctions here. So it's not going to run separately at 2 a.m. The orchestrator, which is the overnight pipeline agent, will be executing this skill. But yes, the orchestrator, which is the overnight pipeline agent, should be running this skill as a task sub-agent in that workflow. So I'm giving it that feedback right now. And like I was saying, a lot of this is related to work. So it's basically my pipeline for meetings is like 80-90% work. I'm looking at ways for it to also ingest other meetings, like particularly offline meetings as well. And that's where I'll be migrating over to Claude. But that's a work in progress, waiting for my Claude to come. And when that happens, I'll be upgrading this entire system. So how it runs, overnight pipeline. So anyways, this will be overwritten when, oh, actually it's correct, right? Overnight pipeline discovers meeting input, reads meeting extractor workflow, spawns meeting reviewer sub-agents via tool, agent tool, sub-agents runs autonomously, returns confirmation. The meetings reviewer is not a standalone cron job. Yeah, so it actually got it right. Smart. Okay, so what are we doing here? Overnight pipeline skill. Discover, yeah, daily session log, daily note, whoop data. This is the sub-agent. Yep, synthesize and route. This is design decision, sub-agent versus pipeline. Discovery is IO heavy. Self-contained parallelization, that's good. Integration with specialist writers. Okay, so what's the pipeline flow? So this is the scan inbox, Gemini notes, right? Email for target date, extract meeting names, dates, Gmail IDs. Find in drive for each meeting, search drive for matching Gemini notes, filter against state file. Yes, there is a state file. Meaning to say that once it has already been reviewed, it goes into a JSON log of what meetings have already been reviewed. So you're not double reviewing stuff. Export each drive doc as text. Apply name corrections from meeting config.json. Good. Clean up transcription artifacts, typos, formatting. Identify and extract. Topic participants, Okay. So what's missing here? Okay. We have context documents that needs to be updated, right? Live actions, people nodes. Now, what's missing here based on what I described earlier when building the session wrapper agent is that the quality of its ability to document is dependent on how much context it has about what it's documenting, right? So in this case, it's reading and cleaning, but it doesn't have the context about what is it reading and cleaning. So for me, I think that before you even read and clean, it needs to load the context document, right? So what I'm going to tell it is it's got the overnight pipeline thing right. Okay. I'm just going to say in the pipeline flow, before the agent reads and cleans, it should have background context around what it's reading and cleaning. And as such, it needs to load the context documents before step 3. This means live, your actions, and whoever that is part of the meetings, which is individual people.md files. Okay, action items unresolved. Yep, I think this looks good. Append Sean's action items, so that's where caliber action. So that's basically for work what I'm responsible to do. So that log becomes something that gets injected every time I say, hey, I need to do some work. What's on my to-do list, right? People notes, okay, what they owe me. File paths, okay, these are all my context documents. Relationship. Okay, so this one is basically showing that I currently have a meetings review command. What stays the same is the config file, state file, name corrections. So that's that correction map that's happening. Gmail plus Drive discovery, same files, patterns, path error handling, open questions. There's the QMD that I have, but I won't talk about that today. But linking it to QMD would be good, because then I can semantically search if I have any questions about old meetings that has happened. Yeah, then it's also highlighting non-caliber meetings, what happens with stuff outside, and that's where the Claude comes in. Gemini transcript quality, it varies. Some meetings get detailed notes, others get thin summaries. Handle it gracefully. Okay, this is pretty good. I'm just gonna get it to make some of the changes here, but I think what I want to impress upon you right now is this workflow here, right? Which is, again, before we even build anything, we have an idea of how a lot of these things work. And if you don't have an idea and your mind doesn't work this way, what you can do is you can work through it with the agent itself. Say, what's the end output that I want? Can you scan my current ecosystem to come up with one and then work through it together? I like to visually map a lot of these things out myself, right? And then after that, like I was showing you, just copy the entire thing and paste it, right? Okay, so 2 changes, skill package. Let me update the PRD. 3 edits needed. Okay, it's just editing. Now let's take a look at its eval review. Okay, benchmark, pass rate, there's nothing here. Because again, this is a qualitative assessment. So when it came to this specific eval, did it meet the criteria of what I think is good? Okay, mapped out, set. Let's remove. So what was shipped? Remove templates, archive 3 more templates, archives, migrated, deliberated, yep, decided, learned, yep. That's a lot in this session, huh? Okay. The next one, eval review. This one's 954. Okay, so what was interesting is that the session itself, all of it used the time entry is the same, which is interesting. Vault cleanup, funny enough, it's the same thing. Okay, so that part was a bit funk. Now let's take a look at what output tabs here. I'll say that the output tabs are all of the same eval. Okay, it passed 18 out of 18. Without skill, 5 out of 18. Yeah, naturally. The baseline produced decent content, but the wrong structure for overnight pipeline. Token usage is usually slightly lower with the skill. 28% duration increase is acceptable given 100% format compliance. When you're done reviewing, click submit all reviews. It'll download a feedback.json, then come back here and let me know what you think. I'll try the skill based on feedback. Okay. Let's take a look at what's happening. Robbie. Okay, we're good. Right, so while this is being fixed, what I will like to do is I now have the meetings reviewer done. What it should then do, okay, so that you have the entire picture around building a lot of these things, is you should now update the PRD overnight pipeline with the meeting reviewer So then you have the complete picture of what we're building here. So this one is done. Going through evals right now. This one has been scoped out. This document here now is being upgraded. So then the next step for us is to get the meeting reviewer agent done, then build the entire pipeline accordingly. See what's happening. Okay, instead of giving it to me in HTML, it's giving it to me in presentation, which is what matters, right? I am personally pretty happy with the output. Let's take a look. Format, without skill, domains, Project Alfred, no grouping, E20, state, friend, yep, correctly committed, in progress. Bottom line is skill produces consistent structure, machine possible output that the overnight pipeline can consume. The baseline produces decent content, but in unpredictable formats. So that is without the skill, right? What's your take on output quality? No, I think we're good. And yeah, I think our session wrap skill has been upgraded. So the next step after this would be for us to rewire a lot of the, yes, it's actually telling me what the next steps are, right? To deploy. Okay, I'm just gonna say let's deploy it. Cool. So yeah, that's getting deployed. Okay, so now with the session wrap agent done and the meetings reviewer scoped out, the next part of it will actually be to build the meetings reviewer skill. So what I like to do typically is I like to clear the context window, and the reason why I do this is so that I'm not over bloating the context window unnecessarily. So I think it was at 18% before, and that is reaching about the 200,000 limit. Right now we've got a 1 million context window, but as you go above 200k, it tends to get more expensive, and yeah, the accuracy decreases. So what I'm doing here is I am clearing my session so that it runs afresh. And what I am going to be doing right now is I will be referring to the PRD meetings reviewer in order to build out that skill. Okay, so in very similar fashion, I'm gonna say I want to build a new skill, spin up the skill creator. So it will spin up the skill creator, and very similarly what I'll be doing is giving it the meetings reviewer PRD, which we worked on earlier. We reviewed it, looks good. It is contextualized within the overnight pipeline. So you can find the specs of PRD here, and PRD meetings reviewer. This skill will be used as a part of a wider workflow, which you can find here. And then I'm sharing the PRD overnight pipeline. And then finally, I will also say I currently have a slash meetings review command, which is okay. So think about this as an upgrade, but you can be using existing artifacts that the meeting reviewer has created. It's all in the PRD. So again, what we're doing is we're planning it out giving it the important details for it to then go ahead and intelligently work out what it needs to know to create the skill. Again, because I'm using the skill creator here, what it will go through is multiple rounds of evaluations. This one I might run offline after this to make sure that it works, because again, it's going to be reviewing meetings from my work, which will undoubtedly contain some sensitive information, so probably won't be running evals live here. But yeah, just showing you the next stage of the build. Right after that, once the meeting reviewer skill has been worked out, we will then complete the context curator agent. And just to give you some insight around what we'll be building here, I'll go through the overnight pipeline. So this is the final piece of the puzzle that wires all of it together. Very similarly to how we built the session wrapper that has a session entry schema, I also have a daily summary spec sheet. So this will tell it specifically what the daily summary should look like in terms of how it's written, right? So that is quite important in terms of giving it instructions of what output you're expecting. So you've got your a few design choices that I will be implementing here would be, for example, so these are all the data inputs right now. Something that I'll probably amend is the whoop data, because it's already ingested into my daily journal, so no point scanning that again. So these are all the important documents that, or rather, this is how a lot of the information is being routed into the right documents. Actually, not even the right documents, right? And that's the point that I wanted to make in this part when I'm explaining what we'll be building after this. And that is the spawn specialist writer sub-agents. Now, earlier I mentioned, again, the principle here is this: if the agent doesn't have context about you, then when it writes something, it writes blind. It writes from a cold start, so to speak. But if the agent understands the context around what it's writing, the quality of what it writes is a lot better. You won't run into things like duplication. You won't run into things that seem out of place or seem completely out of the blue. So that's why what we're doing, instead of just having one agent write all of it, we are getting specialist writers to write different parts of the daily summary. Okay, so we've got the caliber writer. So this is work. It first understands what the plan is. It has the live log of what's happening. It has my personal actions, and then it's also going to be reading the people that are involved in the meeting to understand what to write inside. So then, like I was saying, it understands how to deduplicate things on what's inside of here. So if there's nothing new, it won't be updating it unnecessarily. And again, it must understand Caliber's business context before writing. Then we've got the project writers, and assuming that the session is going to be a session about Alfred, then it will read the project.md for Project Alfred. It will read the memory.md, so that's the learnings files for that project specifically. It understands where we're at, what the game plan is. It understands what historical learnings we have gathered already. And if we're seeing repeats of the same patterns of learnings, then it won't actually just add another entry. So yeah, we've got a project writer, we've got the caliber writer, which is more work related. A lot of times it will be writing from meetings. And then finally, we will have the personal context writer. So this one will be writing to my profile, my patterns as a person. It'll be writing to my personal people files, right? Etc. 3 different streams, and sometimes in my, every project will spin up one writer. So every writer is specialized in understanding caliber, understanding project A, project B, and then understanding me as a person as it then documents and updates all of my context files. I would say that that's probably the most important design decision around the context curator agent. So again, looking through how this has been built, it will read the daily log that is updated after every session. This one is a rolling log, and then it will read my journal. It will also then read, or rather the meeting reviewer agent will run concurrently and then feed into the context curated agent. So it takes input from here, and from here, and then it combines all of it, has specialist writers that go to the right files to write into them. Cool. So let's see where we're at here. I've studied PRDs and existing meeting reviews command thoroughly. Architecture is clear. An autonomous upgrade of the command package as a skill for overnight pipeline to spawn as a sub-agent. Here's what I understand L delta to be. Okay, so this is the in existing command. Creates.md per meeting in caliber / meetings. Context aware. So this is call extraction is what I was talking about, right? So all it does is it reads the transcript and the meeting notes. This one understands all the relevant documents. And then we've got sub-agent spawn by overnight pipeline and manual fallback. Okay, so 3 questions before you build folder structure for meeting summaries or monthly. Yep, that's too flat. But what we should have, that's too flat. The PRD raises the question of trust building phase. Write summaries for skip context docs. Doc updates until validated. Do you want that? Let's. So this is a very interesting consideration, right? Which is, do you want to, like, it needs to be able to extract and clean up a lot of the writing, or rather it needs to be transcribing the meetings well before it then goes and updates the context documents. In my opinion, let's just YOLO and let's just write. Go for autonomous from the start. We will review quality via Evals right after this. And one more thing I would say, what's really important is the meeting notes / transcript clear workflow. So pay attention to that. It needs to be tight. And then finally, should the skill support both modes, date argument for pipeline and catch up, or just date based for now? So the skill should support both, right? Manual invocation when I need something on an ad hoc basis. Date argument as well as it's used within the pipeline. Yep. Okay, here we are. We have the Claude skills to be written right now. So we'll go through it bit by bit. Okay, meeting reviewer, autonomous meeting extraction engine, discover meeting notes, Gemini note taker transcripts, cleans them up. And then 2 PRDs govern this. Okay, pipeline mode, manual mode. So that's the both the modes that we talk about. The workflow is scan inbox, find in drive, load context. So this should be relevant people nodes, right? Read and clean, export documents, extract metadata, structured content, write summaries, 1 Vault file. Yep. Per meeting, update context, update state. So that's going to be the meetings that have already been reviewed. Result, return result, JSON payload, pipeline, or printed summary. Manual. Okay. Step 1. So this is all the information inside of here. If no emails found, done. Find in drive. Yep. Check. Load context. Okay, right, so it's intelligent in the sense where it's per meeting based on participants identified from email, subject, or doc name. So that's identifying who's a part of the meeting. So it's not going to load people who weren't part of the meeting, obviously, which is good. Right, its part matters. Okay, giving it context. Read clean transcript. This is a quality critical step. Bash, GWS. Yep, it looks good. Artifact cleanup. Okay, duplicate sentence, remove orphan timestamps with no context, broken sentences, speaker label inconsistencies, redundant Gemini headers. Yep, who, participants, 2-3 lines, discussion points, right? Create meeting summaries. I think everything here is good. These are dedupe, right? People notes, update state. Okay, it generally looks good, so we just go ahead and build the skill. Yep. Okay, so skill's been drafted, and like I said, I will review the efficacy and effectiveness of this skill separately. But yeah, let's assume that it runs well, and let's get into building the next piece of the puzzle. So closing out, let's start again a new session. Okay, all right, skill creator. Oh, gosh. All right, so the skill is called the overnight context curator, and you'll find the PRD here. I previously built 2 skills that feeds into this skill. They are the a session wrap, right, with this PRD, and the skills meetings reviewer with this PRD. Alright, so giving it all the context it needs, the overnight context curator ties it all together to keep my context updated automatically every night while I sleep. Build it out the skill, and I will then rewire it up as a cron job every day at 2 a.m. For now, just very slow. Cool, so now it's gonna read all of the documents again to come up with the skill. Now let's take a look. Okay, so it's come back to me with the skill build, overnight context curator, autonomous pipeline that synthesizes everything from a day journal biometrics into daily summary and routes extracted items to specialist writers that keep the system context fresh by morning all destination docs are current. Why this exists? I mean, we spoke about this. Overnight context curator, discover inputs, spawn meetings reviewer, right? So it's the meetings reviewer sub-agent that runs in the background. Okay, so okay, parse all session entries, deduplicate across sections, apply dual access routing, build write the payloads, write the summary, spawn specialist writer sub-agents. So that's the caliber writer, project writers, 1 per project, personal context writer, log the results. Okay, so discover inputs 1A to 1C. Well, determine the date first. Great. Daily session log. Okay, so that's usually today. Read the full file. Contains all pre-extracted sessions entries for the day. Already structured by domain with 4 information families, which is great. Right, daily note. So that's going to be from my journal. There's going to be stuff like energy, state, mood, what's on my mind, daily score, whoop data. Okay. Meetings reviewer. I'm probably gonna remove the whoop extraction from this. So I'm gonna say, oh, it's okay. We can amend it later. I mean, there's no harm for it to read the whoop data. It's fine. Meeting review handles everything autonomously. Okay. Set meeting 0 in daily summary log. Okay. Synthesize and route. Process daily session log. The data is already structured by session wrap. The pipeline jobs is to consolidate across sessions and route to writers. Domain name. So it will have things like Project Alfred in the right logs. Deduplicate cross sessions. Dual access routing. Items route by source, domain, or destination depending on type. Build writer payloads. Write the daily summary. So that's going to be in the daily summary. It's got the reference, which is the daily spec. Should be about 120 lines, 900 words. Then spawn specialist subwriters. Each writer read relevant workflow reference files and include its content in the sub-agent prompt along with rounded payload. Let's give it a go and see what it builds for us. Okay, we can open this up to see what it's writing. Right, so this is the daily summary. It's got the front matter here. Okay, project writer workflow. So instructions, which is context to load. So it's make sure that it loads it first. Okay, then write the target. For the project writer subagent spawned by overnight context creator, you receive a payload of items tagged to a specific project. Your job is to update the project's memory file with doable context beyond today, context to load. Okay, and then write target memory. If memory MD doesn't exist, create it with this structure. Append targets, deduplication, deliberation, writing quality. Cool. Personal context workflows. Yep, looks good. So it's just writing all the pieces of the puzzle. And here we have it. Cloud skills, daily summary spec, context writers, pipeline, flow, project writer creates the MD, log results. Okay, so I want you to remove the step around gathering whoop data, because that can be found in my daily journal. So just copy that across. Okay. What's happening here? Okay, making the skill MD. Yep, so it's removed the whoop biometric data gathering, which is great. Okay, so it's done. It's removed it. So we're done building this, right? What I would do is I would go through in detail all of the different components here, and then obviously run it through the evals to make sure that it is working as a next step. A lot of what will be processed is going to be pretty private, so it will be ingesting my journals, my meetings, so that's not a section that I can be sharing. However, I will be back again to talk a bit about how we will be wiring all of these contexts into every session as they are loaded, and also then to set up the cron job once I am done with the evals.